Well, this is the first episode of the Photo Geezers of the Givens Highland Farm Photo Club. We have Dick Yarmy and Dave Hearn. What we intend to do today is to present a few of the pictures that were submitted for the April 3rd meeting, make some comments on them, and then share that onto the Photo Geezers YouTube channel. So with that said, I'm going to go in and share my screen, and we'll bring up Lightroom. And hopefully everybody can now see Lightroom. Let me get some things out of the way here on my screen. And with no more introduction, maybe we'll go straight into the photos. Dick, you want to make a couple of comments?
No, why don't you start with your first picture and we'll just go in from there.
Okay. And I'm going to comment, we're going to try to keep this under a half hour. So we're obviously we're in the early days of production. So it'll be a while before we get all the kinks worked out. Or maybe this will be the first and last edition. So I'm going to start off with a shot that actually breaks the submission rules. This was done on Thursday evening, even though midnight Wednesday was the cutoff. But Rock Ward was out in the driveway last night. We have a phenomenon right now where Venus every 8 years shows up very close to, and then this is Venus here, very close to the Pleiades. And Rock did a very good job of capturing Venus and showing the associated Pleiades. This is, I guess, his close-up version, astrophotography. So just thought we'd throw that up there and let you see it. Comment, if you shoot the night sky, you need to make a guess initially as to what your exposure ought to be. But then you're going to have to adjust after that. In the case of this photo, Venus is very bright, and the Pleiades are several order of magnitude lighter, although you can see them with the naked eye. So you have to make a guess at your exposure and then adjust afterwards, trying to get a balance between the two of them. Any comments, Dick?
No, just what you said of having to be flexible enough to make that adjustment. You go in with your first guess, and then luckily with digital, you can look at it and then do what you can to balance. Again, it could be balanced somewhat in post as well. But it's just a really good job of recording something that's there.
So this is a photo submitted by Tom Maynard. And Dick, I think you had some particular.
Yeah, what caught me about this was the emotional content. You know, it's just one of those things where it's exactly the right moment. It's beautifully photographed, but it's the right moment and the right exposure at the right time. Just really a very, very interesting picture to me. And I love the color tones of it as well.
Yeah. This is another picture by Tom Maynard, and in this particular case, I wanted to highlight it because in the case of a whoops, let me fit that down. That's there. Shooting animals, a lot of times, if you don't bring them out from the background, you will tend to lose them. In this particular case, because you have the green foliage, that you get to see a lot of the detail in the fur of the monkey. I don't know what kind of monkey it is, but it's just an example of looking how, when you're shooting either people or animals, how do you isolate them to make sure they stand out? Any comments, Dick?
Yeah, same thing, that it's an environmental portrait as opposed to just a portrait. And in this case, very important. I think it would not be near as effective if there was sky or, you know, little or no background. I think that the background is very important to this picture.
So Dick, well,
This was Samantha Maynard, I believe, right?
correct.
And same thing as with the goats, the emotional content and the storytelling ability of the picture. And if I remember the caption correctly, it was sharing, yeah, sharing a snack.
Right.
Again, just a great human interest photograph, I thought.
Which, just as a side comment, a lot of times I think it's helpful for you to attach a caption to your photos, and especially in certain cases, it might help somebody understand what you're trying to do. All photos don't necessarily need a caption, but I know I tend to put captions on mine. That Dick, I think you do also.
Yeah, I think I mentioned to you, you asked me about one of the pictures that I titled, and what happens is when I've done processing it, I look at it and the first thing that jumps in my mind is usually the title. You know, it's whatever it stirs within me is what I think the title should be. So.
In fact, I'm going to just jump ahead to this one here, of Carolyn. And, you know, you initially, this is a two exposures, right? A double exposure?
Yeah, it was experimenting with that that little aura around her, you know, which is what led me to I think I titled it Dreaming or something like that.
Right.
But I was really trying to take the highlights of her face and then recreate them with a double exposure, out, outlining the same shape. It's
Yeah.
just repetition of shape, something that you taught us to look for in pictures.
But for me, when I saw this picture and saw the caption about dreaming, at least for me, that added a lot of understanding, or it added an emotional connection to me, because I kind of see her in a dream state. So again, it's a case where the caption sometimes can help the viewer provide additional interpretation.
Yeah, one thing I find interesting, at least from myself, and I don't know if it applies to others, but many times I'm trying to do something because I want to know how to do it, or it's a technique, but as I get into it and the technique fades away, and then some of the emotion starts coming out in the photograph. So you may not enter it with the idea of you doing something emotional, but as the technique becomes less important to you, I think the picture gets better, I guess is what I'm saying.
This is George Leroy's picture. He sent it in because he has his Christmas cactus that finally bloomed in March, and he's to be complimented because he did try to isolate it on a black background, and of course you do have the complementary colors of red and green. Maybe could have relocated it just a little bit in framing.
I'm sorry, David?
He maybe could have relocated a little bit differently in framing. But
Yeah, it has a tendency to be just a little unnerving because it's a little off kilter. But that could easily be cropped. You know, if you're thinking from the left-hand corner down with the same aspect ratio, it could easily be righted, I believe.
well, seeing as how we are in Lightroom, I'd already cropped it a little bit. We could crop it. You could change something more like that.
I think, yeah. Give a little more to the leading edge like you did, which is what I would do in it, yeah. A little more detail, and then you still have the same dynamic.
And talking about shooting against a dark background, Here's a photo by Sue Janke. Just a lovely photo. It'd be interesting. Too bad we don't have Sue on here so we can find out what she used in her iPhone to get the particular lighting she's got. But you can
the lighting bringing out the delicacy of the flower is just incredible to me. I mean, it's just beautiful, beautiful. The texture is there, but it's so light you have to look to see it.
Yeah.
And it makes you look at it longer and harder, I think.
But having it against that black background, just, you know, your eye's not going to go anywhere but to that flower.
Yeah, just exceptional picture.
This is a close-up shot from Sue Smith. I'm not sure we know exactly. I know it's a shower curtain, or I mean a handrail, or what it is, but more abstract. Again, I wish we had Sue. I think she did do some toning on it, so it's a very interesting tone.
Yeah, it becomes an abstract study of shapes and shadows and highlights, and I think the toning accentuates that. I think if it was a straight black and white or even a color print, it would not be as effective as it is with tone the way it is.
This is from Frank Sapp. Again, he obviously had spent some time this year on the beach. He was down there with all those partiers for the coronavirus spring weekend, I guess. Just a joke. But yeah, this is a case of what I would call found art. You take what you have on the beach and create art from it. And I think it's nice what can be done on a beach. Speaking of found art, whoa, sorry about that. My mouse kind of gets carried away. This is from Marion Ward. What was the comment you said? She shouldn't have drunk so much wine first?
No, I said no. Probably some snide remark like that. Wasn't important. The abstract and the color choice that came from the wine and whatever else is reflecting in the glass, probably decor of the room or placemat or something, has made a really interesting color choice, I think. And the highlights surrounding the stem shadow just makes a really nifty abstract, I think.
I almost wonder if it wasn't, it looks like up in here in these areas, there looks like ends of grass. I wonder if she didn't have some sunlight coming into it.
Very well could be. And the colors up in that corner are really interesting, I think.
Up in here?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a picture I took. We have this bush to the side of our house, and the bees have really been working it over. And I put on my telephoto. This was actually shot, I think, at an effective focus distance about 280 millimeters, and then cropped in to reveal all this structure in a bee, which I found kind of interesting.
The detail, especially in the eyes, giving, the impression of we get to see what the bee is seeing, was really interesting to me. And the incredible detail in the wing detail, and in the flowers that he's feasting on. I think my comment when I saw this was the gull could not have been better placed had it been photoshopped in. People talk about the decisive moment, but Tom certainly knew when to press the shutter on this shot. Just incredible placement and composition.
Yeah.
and the repetition of the smaller gull underneath.
Now this is a Tom Maynard photo. I forgot to mention that. Well, the interesting thing is that I think like you, as soon as this one popped up on my screen, it immediately grabbed my attention, and the as you said, the position of that gull couldn't hardly be more perfect than what it is. Nice capture.
Look at all the elements of the composition involved, not only the incredible placement of the two gulls, but the keeping the girders vertical and the connex boxes. You know, everything is beautifully aligned, and yet you've got the waveform shape of the gull. It's just really nifty picture. It's really good.
Oh, sorry about that technical dig. This is Sue Maynard. Dick, you want to?
My first reaction to that was exposing for the exterior, which causing the nice long shadows coming at you in the foreground and the silhouette, changes this from a snapshot to a picture, an illustration. Had, you know, like on a point and shoot camera or on an iPhone, had the flash been turned on, this would be snapshot. And by not illuminating the foreground, it becomes to me a real photograph, excellent photograph. And it's cinematic, for hate to use that cliched word so much, but it's very cinematic.
My fault sometimes would have been try to grab some details in the people and sacrifice a little of the external, but by having them in silhouette, I think it just adds so much to the picture. We don't need to know any more than their silhouettes.
Well, I think now that we're shut in and you're seeing more TV, when you see features anymore, it's something you look at it on Netflix or Prime or whatever, you'll see that this is becoming a style today for storytelling. You'll see cinematographers are paying much more attention to holding the detail that's coming in through the windows and letting the actors work in shadow and slivers of light. And it's very effective. I think it holds you just like this picture does.
So this is a rock board picture, and for me, to have all the detail in those roots, and then have it mimicked by the rays in the sun, it really add a lot to the picture. And I think you had a comment, Dick, about this is an example where iPhone kind of can.
Yeah, with all the kidding I do occasionally about iPhones, this is a place where the iPhone was the perfect instrument to photograph this. This would be very difficult to do with a conventional camera and take a very expensive wide-angle lens to do it. And this is perfectly executed with an iPhone. You know, the detail and focus of the close roots at the bottom of frame, and yet the depth of field carrying right on through into the blossoms backlit behind the tree. So it was a perfect tool for this shot, and well executed, you know, nicely done.
This is Horace Hunt, and I think Dick and I both immediately were impressed with how he used perspective on this. I'm not exactly sure where this rating's at, but everything kind of leads you all to one point in the picture. And I will show you, I did do some post-processing because, whoops, Dick and I discussed it, and we thought maybe we needed to keep attention on the rail. And initially the sidewalk and the sky were a little bit too overwhelming. If I were to, whoops, hold it, technical deep. If I were to show, let me turn that off. So that's what it was originally in terms of exposure. And then I went in and kind of darkened up the sky and the sidewalk, and so it doesn't compete quite as much. Of all the pictures submitted this month, this is my favorite, if I can have favorites. Was it Cartier-Bresson, the decisive moment?
Yep.
He used to talk about he's probably one of our most famous street photographers, and he used to talk about the decisive moment. This is Sue Janke's picture, but if anything captures where we're at today, this does it. We have our beautiful campus setting. We got spring coming out. We have people out walking their dogs, and we have social distancing. So who would have thought we had street photographers on campus?
Well, and also the body language, the leaning forward. You know, with social distance, and yet as human beings, we have a tendency to start leaning forward when we're talking at that distance. Notice the on the left, which again, I think is one of my favorite pictures too. And I think I mentioned if you saw it next year, this would remind you of the social distancing, which hopefully will no longer be in next year.
We hope, yes. This is a Sydney Wilson photo, and I included it because Sydney, a lot of times her pictures inform her art, and I think you could have debate how good or not good the picture is. I personally like it. I like the kind of uniformity of tones. It's labeled, I think, 7 ants, and if you search through the picture, you can actually find ants. There's an ant here. Whoa, stop it. You have ants around the screen, but when I saw this, I want to encourage Sydney to do a piece of artwork from it.
It's got all the elements.
So this is a Horace Hunt picture. And again, I wish we had Horace on here. This is a very interesting photo, very abstract, but having some almost identifiable elements. We didn't know whether this was his shower door window or what, but it almost looks like a double exposure.
Maybe Horace could drop us an email and tell us about this.
Yeah. It'd be good. I put it in here because I'm just curious about it. And thinking of double exposures, this is Dick Yarmy's photo. He's been experimenting with intentional camera movement and combining 2 exposures together. You want to talk a little bit about it, Dick?
Yeah, I was just interested. The YouTube video that I saw, the artist worked with like objects. He would shoot landscapes. I think I put one in this month. It was just kind of an orange landscape with a tree, and you doubled it and then mixed it till it was what you liked, and then finished it. And I wondered what would happen if I mixed unlike items, and the large blocky looking things. Or patio stone, and the greenery is obviously exactly that, just shooting off into greenery with around the farm. And then I combined them and rotated them until I doubled some of the images, and then just finished them off by overblowing the color green and bringing in some turquoise. So it was just a matter of turning 2 stock pictures into an abstract.
And one of the reasons I included it, besides the fact that I like it, is that I've been encouraging people to explore Snapseed. And in Snapseed, you can actually bring two different images together and do a lot of this same kind of effect right in Snapseed. So,
Yeah, the software that I use to do this is produced by the same people that make Snapseed, and I believe it's the same algorithms. I believe what I was working with could easily be duplicated in Snapseed.
This is Sue Janke. For those of you who are unfamiliar, probably all are familiar with the Methodist Church and the cemetery beyond the sidewalk to nowhere. But Dick, you had a comment about seeing a picture that.
Yeah, I think I put that online. Maybe Sue even saw it, but is that I've been up there 100 times. It's pretty close to my house. And I was just aghast that I had never looked at it from this perspective. You know, it shows you how somebody else's vision and eye can. I never got a picture this nice of this area. I was always looking in the wrong direction. And the way that the church is placed in relation to the graveyard, et cetera. It's just an incredibly well done picture, and it makes you think that it's worthwhile to revisit places that you've been photographing and look at them again and look at them from another point of view. But I really like it. It's painterly to me.
Yeah. And I think she caught it at the right time of day too. So the light.
Yeah, they complement the color of the sky is at that time complementing the purple flowers is just, you know, again, like a painting, like she picked the palette.
This is a Buzz Yoder picture. And obviously a close-up. And there's a couple of things I would comment on it besides just the general composition. And taking flowers a lot of times are best photographed without trying to photograph the whole flower. The other thing is that the palette is a very soft palette. They're not the brilliant colors. You know, today sometimes we overbake colors, and sometimes a softer palette, especially with a softer focus that this picture has, makes it quite nice. I'm going to throw up another one while we got here. This is a photo by Atos Kramer. And again, it's an example of where going up close, she calls this the edge of the pansy. It's a pansy, but having something that's other than down in this region here, everything is soft focused and adds to the picture, I think, by being in soft focus.
I find it interesting what the soft focus also does to the color saturation. You know, you're getting a sort of a different fading as you're going into the center. Again, just the technique works well with this.
Yeah, because between the soft focus, you don't have any of the texture. So what you really are seeing is the color gradients that transition to it.
And I think sometimes it's good to, you know, to exceed what the camera will do. If you're at a point where the camera won't focus because it's too close, but it still looks good to you in the finder, push the button.
Yeah.
There are no rules.
Yeah, that's the rule. There are no rules. So this is a picture by Atasa. I have several others, and when I post all the pictures, there's some 90 pictures that eventually will be in the slideshow. But I kept coming back to this thing because I'm saying, well, why does this particular color blend match for me? And Ernie's got a picture of the same tree. We have some close-ups that other people have done of the cherry blossoms, and you got a blue background. So I'm going to take just a second here. But first off, I'm going to go into playing around with colors a little bit, because normally you would think of this as being pink and blue, and obviously there is the red and pink, but what really struck me was if I come down here and I vary the luminance, in other words, how dark, how light is say magenta, and you can start seeing a change, how much magenta, which is a mix of blue and red and pink, or in the case of purple, in the sky, what's happening. Look you think of the sky as being blue, but look how much purple is in that sky. And also, if you look closely, you'll see the sky changing with the magenta. So I'm doing this kind of as a color study. So if I put up the color wheel, what you'll see is that generally the colors that are in that picture are all these analogous colors, all these colors that are right next to each other on the color wheel. I just found that interesting, because the real point of this is when you see a picture and you like a picture, but you don't really understand why you're being pulled to it too much, I think it's always helpful to say, well, what is it about this picture that attracts me? Why am I liking this thing? Dick, do you have any comments?
Yeah, no, you'd said that yesterday, and it really struck home with me, is that many times why we like it, we don't understand. Once you do start to understand that, then you're able to replicate it later in your own photographs. You know, when you're post-processing, you start thinking about the analogous colors and complementary colors and things of that nature. Split toning, all the different ways in post you have to alter the color temperature. You can make something more pleasing than it. Well, actually, what you can do is bring it back to the way it looked to your human eye when you wanted to take the picture, and when you take the picture, quite often you don't duplicate that.
These aren't cherry blossoms. This is a photo by Dave Barstow. I think, Dick, you thought maybe this was apple of some kind. I'm not sure what the flowering tree is.
It says Samsung, so it says Samsung, so it's probably a Samsung, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So in this particular case, I mean, one of the reasons I put this in here was when it first came up. Let me go to the develop. What I saw, let me try to get on my cursor here. I'm not getting where I want to.
You have to shorten it before you can rotate it, because it's hitting the edges.
Yeah.
You have to make it smaller, and then it'll rotate. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to rotate. I want to grab this and move it up. No, I don't want to rotate it. What I'm trying to do is make it smaller.
Try the top and see if you can, and then slide it. You know, pull it down, then slide. No, it's not letting you do it.
I'm not sure what's going on. But anyway, imagine if I know what I'm going to do. I'll just go in and I'll make it smaller. So let me go back here to custom. For whatever reason, it's not letting me do this while I'm in Zoom. But for me, what I saw was something more like this, which immediately grabbed me. So, which I think is very nice. The softness, the clouds, everything. So the picture, let me reset this. For me, what I saw was a picture. Samsung has a very high, the aspect ratio tends to be very, very elongated. And
it's like vertical 16:9.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess even on iPhones and other photos, want to encourage people to think about taking the image and then doing some cropping.
Well, I think the other thing when you cropped in and made the square out of it was that uh, the concept we've talked about before, what can you take away to strengthen a picture? And the piece of gutter and stucco and window really do nothing to what you're trying to say. So losing that didn't hurt anything.
Yeah.
You've taken something away and strengthened a picture.
You said it better than I did. We had quite a few. This is a Tassa Kramer's picture. We had quite a few pictures like this. Tassa had 2 or 3 where it was I liked because it was a contrast in textures. You have these lovely petals and soft petals, and then the bark of the tree and the texture in the tree. And to me, it was a nice contrast. Plus, looks like Atassa was using her spritzer bottle. That's a joke, Atassa.
Yeah.
This is a photo by Susan Murdy, and for those of this is taken on the, I'm pretty sure it was taken on the Herb Ball Trail. What I liked about this one is all those leaves, these bigger leaves around here, those are all from trout lily. But these flowers are star chickweed, and it's a very, very small plant. Kudos to Susan for even being able to see these on the trail. And by having them, those white against all those darker colors, it's just a nice picture.
Yeah, I think again, there are no rules. You know, if you look at all these elements, the first thing you think of if you're pointing a camera, oh, it's going to be too busy. And it's not. The fact that you have one whole palette of the greens and browns, and then the almost as if you had layered the white on top of it, as if the greens and brown leaves were one of the backgrounds that you perform for people, David, by printing them on 3 feet and put flowers on them. You know, it's just interesting how well it works and what a grabbing picture it is. Yet if you're walking and looking down, you might think the scene was too busy to photograph.
And I think you made a good comment yesterday was that there's, with the chickweed flowers being sharp, but the background is out of focus, but not totally out of focus. So it's nice to have some context, but there's not enough definition to where your eye is taken away from the flowers.
Yeah, and I think what would happen if it was way out of focus, if it was shot, you know, like wide open, where that was just bokeh blur, then you'd have to crop in on it. Then it wouldn't work. But I think this way it works perfectly because there's enough detail in that background to say what it is and make sense of how these flowers have grown up through it. You know, yeah, it's just very nice picture. Very nice.
Well, that concludes the set of pictures we were going to share with everybody. So I'm going to, hopefully this has recorded, and we'll save the video and put it up, and we encourage people to give us feedback and how we can improve and how we can move forward, and hopefully it helps to connect us a little bit more to our photo club. Dick, you got any comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for so many submissions. It was really interesting with no club going to be held, that we got just a ton of pictures and some, again, the emotional lift. I guess I'd have to shout out to Buzz Yoder. So many of his pictures in the last few days have been signs of spring at a time when we have nothing but rather depressing news coming through other media. I found it a real lift. And David, don't forget to tell them to buy from our sponsors for.
That's right.
make a Patreon
Yeah, you
donation.
we after we're done recording, we'll send out the all our sponsors, and we get at least 10% of anything that you do when you buy from our sponsors. So,
And tell Ernie we're trying to get the liquor store as a sponsor.
yeah. Well, except that after he visited the other day, they had to restock. So goodbye for now.
Thank you much. Bye-bye.